Hi guys, in this video we are going to paint this beautiful minimalistic winter scene as a holiday card. Really quickly, here's all the supplies we're going to be using. We're going to be painting these cards on the Strathmore watercolor cards that come 50 in a set. We've got 50 envelopes and 50 folding cards. And they are 140 pound, 300 GSM, and the approximate size is about 5 by 6 inches. Then for brushes, we have these three brushes right here. We've got the Princeton Neptune number 8, the Princeton Velvetouch number 4, and the Princeton Heritage number 3. For colors, we're technically using just one color, but we've got a slight hint of red happening, and so I'm listing two colors for you. So we've got the Indigo and we've got Cadmium Red, and these are from the Daler-Rowney set of watercolors. Last but not least, for our beautiful embellishments, we're going to be using the Daler-Rowney Pearlescent liquid acrylic in white pearl. And that's it. I've listed all the supplies in the description below. We're going to start off with using the Princeton Neptune number 8 and get some of the indigo, and we want a very muted version or mixture of the indigo, so something where we've got maybe about 10% or even 5% color, and then the rest of it is water. Okay, so something like this. And what we're going to do is make sure we've got lots of white space all around. So we're going to start off by doing a very haphazard wash of this color. So something like this. Just to give us that beautiful old school book illustration feel. Have some stray lines like what I'm doing over here, leaving a little bit of white space between the top and the bottom, a little bit of jaggedy edges off to the side. Push your color around. Feel free to leave some white space on the inside if you want to. I'm going to get a little bit of water and kind of add like a lighter feel to it around. And then washing off this brush ever so lightly. This is the only addition of color we're going to be doing. I'm just taking a little bit of this red hue, which cadmium red hue, mixing it on here. Now this is too bright, so we want it to be extremely light. And then I'm just dropping some in off to the sides while it is still damp. And we want to see that kind of seep in. So if it's doing something like this where it's kind of just sitting there, help it along. We're not looking for copious amounts of this color in there. We just want a very subtle hint. So something like that. Now, before this dries up, we're going to get the Princeton Heritage number 3 brush and then get more of that indigo. And now we're going to mix some of that indigo here. This time it's going to be obviously a lot darker. And what we want to do is go in. So we want to get more color, less water, because this area is very watered down. And we're going to go in, make sure there's not too much color on your brush. It's a nice fine pointed tip. And we're going to start off by doing little trees. So I did a little line and I'm kind of zigzagging or just dabbing across and going slightly wider as I go lower. Dipping the tip of my brush in water, I'm getting a little bit more color. I'm going to do a nice fine line. Now because it's damp, you're going to get a lot thicker. The stroke's going to be a lot thicker just because of the flare of color happening in those areas. So don't worry about that. I'm going to do another tiny one over here. I'm just lightly grazing the tip of my brush and then just dropping these dabs of colors in. So we're getting that nice faded look. We're gonna do one more here. This one will be slightly taller. And we don't even have to add too many dabs. It's kind of just, the water is doing the work for us. And I'm just dabbing as lightly as I can. And then let's do a little bit over here. Again, I'm not doing too much. Notice how I didn't like evenly distribute this color all around. The key is to leave white space because trust me, the color is just going to seep in. Then I'm adding a little bit of extra strokes using the indigo at the bottom. And time is of the essence. This is wet on wet. It is the most popular way to use watercolor, and it's one of my favorites. My absolute favorites. Okay, so now at this point, we're going to zigzag a bit more to kind of have a little bit more of a blend happening at the bottom, because by adding more color on this ground level line, we're getting this area to be the darkest. Okay, so now we allow this to sort of dampen just a little bit. While that's happening, I've quickly washed off my brush, taking my paper towel and lightly dabbing. And I'm just going to lightly do this to kind of pull down some of that color so it kind of comes down into this area here. So now while we are waiting for this to dry up, what I'm going to do is introduce the Daler-Rowney Pearlescent liquid acrylic, and this is the Pearl White, I believe. Where is the name? I just want to make sure I have the right name. Yes, White Pearl. So make sure you shake this really, really well. And then what I'm going to do is add a little bit of that over here. A little goes a really long way. So make sure you don't get too much. Before I continue with that, I just want to lightly spread this out. Perfect. Great. Now, back to Pearlescent. So I'm getting a little bit of water on my brush, mixing it into this mixture right here. And then using any brush really, we're going to do a splatter. Now I realize I'm doing the splatter before it dries up, and that's okay. The reason I am doing it before it dries up, I'll also do it after, is so that I can get a little bit of a pearlescent bleed happening within the trees. Now once that is done, we wait for this to dry up completely before we go back in with just a little bit more of the indigo to highlight certain areas. So let's let this dry up completely and we're going to be back. All right, so we are completely dried up over here. And so I've zoomed in so you can have a better look of what we're going to be doing. So using the number 3 Heritage brush again, I'm just going to get color directly from the color cake. We're not mixing it onto our palette because we want a nice dark color, and at the same time we want like a nice fine pointed tip. So feel free to use a tinier or a smaller brush if you want, but here's what we're going to be doing. We're just going in to kind of highlight like the nice fine pointed tips of these trees. So for instance, I'm going in right here, lightly grazing, and then doing a little bit of zigzag to kind of give a little bit more definition to the trees. And it doesn't have to go all the way down. You can just have like some start there and then have a little bit of dabbing happening at the bottom. And that can be one tree, for example. Then we're doing the same thing. This time I'm going to do one right here. Again, very light, very fine. So feel free to take the brush and lightly graze, do a little bit of practice beforehand, and that might be helpful. Because we're just lightly grazing to get those nice fine pointed tips for our trees. Again, I'm going to do a couple more. We've got our main tall tree over here, so I'm going to start slightly above this area here, lightly zigzagging. Can have some of them kind of falling downward, and by them I mean the tree branches, and I'm just lightly adding it to the edges. And let's do a bunch over here. I'm getting a little bit of water on my brush just to kind of blend this portion in. We're building on the depth of this by just adding a little bit of layering with the colors. And again, leave some of them open, white space as you would call it. We're not painting the whole areas in. This is just to give more definition to our trees. So last but not least, we're going to do the left hand side, and once again, starting with that nice fine pointed tip, lightly grazing. And then just dabbing downward. Now the areas that are like you've got a little bit of white happening in there, leave the white because it really kind of gives a nice loose effect. And lots of snow also. So something like that. Look at that definition coming through. We've got two more, and you can go a little bit scarcer in terms of how much you're adding on these. So this way you can make this first one look like it's on the forefront because of the amount of detail, while this one you can go scarce on the detail, making it look more like it's in the background. All right, so last but not least, we've got our last final one off to the side here. So we've got like 6 in total. And again, same idea. So what I did was started off with that, washing off my brush roughly, wiping it, dabbing it onto paper towel. I'm just going to pull from the colors that we've added here, and I'm pulling that and dabbing down. So it's darkest at the top and then it gets lighter as we go lower. Okay, so that is perfect. So this way now what we have happening is we've got some areas that are very nice and detailed, and then some that are just blending into the background, or blending into like a whole bunch of different trees that are happening in a very loose manner. So now we allow this to dry just a little bit, and then we can go in and add a little bit more of our pearlescent. So most of it is dried up. There are a couple of areas that are a little damp, and here we go. We're going to do one more layer of the splatter with pearlescent. And I'm going to start off by doing a whole bunch here, and I'm making sure I get a ton of this mixture on my brush so I can get a nice thick or larger splatter happening. And then we're going on this side, adding some here. I don't mind if any of it goes around on the sheet. We are just going to make this scene look like it's snowy, and the snow has a nice little glisten to it. Now, in addition to this, you can also add a little bit more of this on the actual trees happening. So for instance, if I take a bunch of that on my number 3, and I find the areas that have the trees that are, the leaves that are darker because they're bunched up, we're just going to go in and drop. Let me make sure I don't have too much, because we want very light little trails of this happening. So it's almost like snow has collected on these leaves, and we're just lightly adding it. dab some at the one in the back, and it's fine if you're not giving it too much detail. I'm just giving a couple of detailed lines where you can tell the layers of the trees, the leaves apart. But some of them can be a little bit blended because, again, this is a very loose style of painting. It's supposed to be relaxing, it's supposed to be quick, it's supposed to be giving that celestial, magical holiday feel. And here we go, we are almost done. Just adding a bunch of that on our main tree over here. And as soon as we are done, I will show you a close-up to show you what it looks like up close, especially with the beautiful glisten. Some of these areas are damp, so it's giving me a nice pretty blend, which I like. And just a little bit on this one here. Now this one I'm kind of extending a little bit out the area, and that's okay. Perfect. So allow this to dry, and then I'll show you guys up close what this looks like. Look how beautiful, minimalistic and pretty this looks. And we've technically used just one color with a little bit of the second color for a slight faint hint, and then the pearlescent to kind of make it all magical and shiny. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments what you thought. All the items and supplies I have used to create this beautiful minimalistic holiday card is listed below, so feel free to check it out, and I look forward to seeing your work. Thank you so much for watching, and we will chat soon. Bye.